Aston Villa barely survived relegation a few months ago, and now Dean Smith's side are in second place in the league standings, and apart from Everton, they're the only Premier League side to boast a 100% win rate. They've scored 11 goals in 3 games and have conceded just twice. However, it wasn't their performance in the first 2 games that made headlines. It is how they performed against reigning champions Liverpool that really stood out. Playing at home with yet again no spectators, the Villains ended up humbling the Reds in a manner we've never seen before. Led by the excellent Ollie Watkins, Villa scored 7 goals against Liverpool. This was a result that none of us saw coming. Indeed, the result overshadowed Man United's 6-1 drubbing at the hands of Tottenham Hotspur a few hours before the game at Villa Park. This is the first time the defending champions have conceded 7 goals in a single game in almost 60 years. In this game, Liverpool ended up making all sorts of records that they possibly never imagined when the day began. During his entire managerial career that's seen him win titles in both Germany and England, Jurgen Klopp has never been on the wrong side of such a humiliating scoreline. Liverpool, on the other hand, have conceded 7 goals for the first time since 1963. In all honesty, the result could have been even worse. Villa were playing some really good flowing football and time again broke the Reds' high defensive line. This was the game that saw the worst qualities of Liverpool brought to the forefront. Defensively, they were in shambles and the midfield had no fluidity whatsoever. With 4 games already played, Liverpool have conceded 11 goals. No other team except for newly promoted West Brom have let in more goals. Throughout the game, we saw that Aston Villa's high press and ability to get the best out of creative players, such as Jack Grealish and Ross Barkley, forced the reigning champs into making basic mistakes. When was the last time we ever saw Jurgen Klopp's men give possession away in their own half? Following the game, Klopp correctly pointed out that his team did all those things that a team shouldn't be doing in a football game. The moment Alisson went down with a shoulder problem on Saturday, it became clear that Adrian was going to be given another chance to showcase his best qualities. Sadly though, the Spaniard was not at the top of his game at all, and it was his poor pass that allowed Watkins to give Villa the lead. The Brazilian's absence did impact things quite a lot, and it becomes clear how important it is to have a top-class goalkeeper in your ranks. Now imagine how different things could have been had Liverpool not bought Alisson from Roma to begin with. You simply can't win titles without going big on your number 1. Another big issue that's now started to rear its ugly head is the team's high line. So many times during the game, Gomez's insistence on playing the offside trap allowed the Villa forward line to come in from behind. Trent Alexander-Arnold was also at 6s and 7s, no pun intended, and was repeatedly caught out of position. He had no answer to the excellent Jack Grealish, who seemed to have a lot of time on his hands every time he received the ball. Want to know how we never miss a match? With Fubo TV, you can stream any game, anytime, anywhere. Use our link in the description to start for free and watch your favourite teams live. In the opening game of the campaign, Leeds United pretty much ripped up Liverpool's high defensive line, and it's clear that the Reds didn't learn their lesson. This was why Aston Villa were able to finish the job Marcelo Bielsa's men had started. Moreover, it had become quite evident that Liverpool simply didn't press Villa enough. You can't really blame the high line since pretty much every big team is doing that these days. However, you can only hold a high line when the players are pressing the opponents when not in possession. And in the case where the players are not pressing, the team then needs to retread back towards the goal and provide an extra shield to the backline. This was Naby Keita's responsibility and he simply did not do his job. He was replaced at half-time, but those who replaced him did not fare well either. Now, a lot of Liverpool fans will say that Liverpool were unlucky in a sense that 3 out of Villa's 7 goals were freakish in nature. First, it was John McGinn's shot that took a wicked deflection off Virgil van Dijk. Then it was Ross Barkley's shot that looped in off Alexander-Arnold, and then it was Jack Grealish's turn to have his shot end up finding its way past Adrian after yet another deflection. However, no one can pin the blame on these 3 goals. Liverpool were guilty of some really atrocious defending. They were hustled and pressed by the Villa's front line, and when their defenders had the chance to pass the ball further up the field, their passing accuracy left a lot to be desired. Van Dijk, who has set standards so high for himself, had more than just an off night. Many times his positioning was questionable, and his decision-making let him down many times. The Dutchman is supposed to be a leader at the back, but on this fateful night he was out of his depth. It would be unfair to take anything away from Aston Villa. The Villains were magnificent on the night and deserved the 3 points. In fact, they could have scored even more goals had they just been a little bit more composed in the final third. Liverpool should count themselves lucky that they didn't become the first Premier League team to concede 10 goals in one game. That would have been embarrassing, given how ruthless they were last season. Ollie Watkins had not scored a single Premier League goal before this game and ended up with a perfect hat-trick, left foot, right foot and a header. Barkley was making his debut. A true Evertonian, the England international was in great form and gave us a sneak peek of how good he can be during his season-long loan spell under Smith. The midfielder scored on his debut and combined great with Grealish. The Aston Villa captain put in another stunning performance and led from the front. The game against Aston Villa was definitely the worst ever performance Liverpool have put in since the inception of the Premier League. Apart from Mohamed Salah, who kept giving his all to a lost cause, not a single player covered himself in glory. There were instances during the match where the Egyptian was seen running deep inside his own half to either receive the ball or to cover for Alexander-Arnold, whose positioning was all over the place. Gini Wijnaldum, whose presence has helped the club a lot in the past 12 months, looked to be playing in spectator mode. The Premier League title win was supposed to be the start of something new, the dawn of a new giant in English football. For years, Liverpool have been flirting with the idea of ruling the game in the country once again, just like they did during the 70s and 80s. Indeed, Jurgen Klopp's men were by far the best team in England and had no peers. Even Manchester City couldn't keep up with the juggernaut of a force that kept swatting away competition. Now, we're not in the habit of saying we told you so, but in one of our previous videos on Liverpool, we did mention that the Reds showed signs of complacency during the second half of the campaign. They appeared a little bit too nonchalant once football resumed after a 90-day lockdown. They were not bossing games like they normally did, and we said that this could threaten their title defence. It seems as if Liverpool have become sort of stagnant ever since they won the title. The players seem to have lost appetite, and this could seriously derail their campaign. The game against Aston Villa was a rude awakening. The last time Liverpool conceded 11 goals in their first 4 league games was way back in the Old English Division of 1937. Villa have won the opening 3 games of the league for the first time since the 1962-63 season. This result alone is definitely not enough to dent Liverpool's title credentials, but it does represent a chance for their opponents. A few months ago, no one would have even thought about taking the game to Klopp's men. Now, teams will be expected to play the champions without fear. A defence that only conceded 33 goals last season suddenly seems porous. They continue to produce errors, concede goals, and make some truly comical decisions. Granted that the team didn't have the services of Alisson, Sadio Mane, and Thiago Alcantara, there is no excuse for a reigning champion to concede 7 goals, that too against the side that avoided relegation on the last day of the season. But on the other side of the spectrum, Aston Villa appear to have turned a corner. They were not really a bad side last season and would have been unlucky had they been relegated. Dean Smith's patience is finally paying dividends. It's clear that Liverpool are in for a testing time because they haven't been able to bring in fresh faces like Manchester City and Chelsea have. Of course, the team's attacking unit is untouchable for now, but the same cannot be said of the defence. It appears that Van Dijk cannot carry this defence alone, and it would have been great had the club gone for a stable centre-back once Dejan Lovren left for Russia. A hallmark of good teams is that they are always adding more strength and depth on the bench. This is done in order to keep the starting 11 on its toes. At Liverpool, we don't really see a lot of competition for places. Those players who are coming off the bench are fairly happy with the status quo. Xherdan Shaqiri, for instance, is staying at Anfield, at least for the next few months, but the Swiss never showed any willingness to stake his claim for a starting berth. The same can be said of Divock Origi. On a day when Manchester United provided a defensive disaster class, we never expected Liverpool to roll over like their bitter rivals. The Red Devils faithful would say that at least they conceded 6 goals while being a man down. Liverpool at least had 11 players on the pitch. This persistence of playing a high defensive line against a team that kept growing in confidence as the game got worse ended up being Liverpool's downfall. Of course, the Reds are expected to come back strongly, but we do get the feeling that Liverpool are no longer the enigma that everyone thought they were a few months ago. There was a time when Manchester City seemed unbeatable. That's no longer the case. Teams have slowly started playing against Pep Guardiola's men without fear. The same trend can now be seen at Liverpool, which means that Klopp really needs to come up with a plan B because, to put it simply, Liverpool have been found out, and as the other teams get into their rhythm, they will be coming for them.